Good morning. It's so wonderful to see us so full and welcoming and discussing with each other. Oh, yeah. Anyway, fills my heart. All right. Welcome to Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Whoever you are and wherever you come from, for this hour, we here are one gathered congregation and all are welcome. Please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing our musical call to worship. We are hymn number 1051 in our teal hymnal. That song touches my heart. My name is Genevieve Emmett, and I use she, her pronouns. I am a neurodivergent woman in her middle 40s. I have curly, dark, I guess it's brown hair at this point. And I have been attending since about 2005. I think I signed the book in 2007. So been around a bit, and I've dabbled in lots of things since then. So the announcements are available in our weekly email newsletter, The Candle. We have one special announcement before the service and another after. Now we're going to announce that Perry Home Companion 3, the comedy variety show, has all their players scheduled, and now we need you guys to come because we need an audience. Friday night here at 7 p.m. There will be a dessert intermission, and we promise great entertainment. Our guest speaker this morning is Reverend Carol McKinley. Reverend McKinley often is a speaker here, is affiliated with the community, or is an affiliated community minister at Olympic Unitarian Universalist Congregation. Today, she is speaking about the stories that we tell in our own lives and the lives of our communities that help us navigate the eternal search for meaning. In this rapidly expanding and increasingly complicated world, she asks the question, do we need to find ways to retell those stories? If you are visiting this morning, please participate as you feel comfortable. If you are here in person, fidget toys and a rocking chair are available for wiggles and sensory needs. We have assisted listening systems available, and if you need one, please see our ushers. Also, you are invited to stay and meet people during our coffee hour. Many members of the congregation attend online. If you are visiting online today, you are welcome to introduce yourself in the chat. More announcements on Kitsap's UU Fellowship activities are available in our weekly email newsletter, The Candle. You can sign up on the website or in the foyer. Please take a moment to silence any electronic devices. Please join me in taking a few centering breaths. We acknowledge that the land on which we gather is the Aboriginal territory of the Suquamish people. Expert fishermen, canoe builders, and basket weavers, the Suquamish live in harmony with the lands and waterways along Washington's Central Salish Sea, as they have for thousands of years. Here, the Suquamish live and protect the land and waters of their ancestors for future generations, as promised by the Point Elliott Treaty of 1855.
Good morning. I'm the Reverend Carol McKinley. I'm an older white woman with white hair, wearing glasses, and a teal, purple, and black stole. Our opening words this morning are from the poet Mary Oliver. I want to write something so simply about love or about pain that even as you are reading, you feel it. And as you read, you keep feeling it. And though it be my story, it will be common. Though it be singular, it will be known to you, so that by the end you will think, no, you will realize that it was all the while yourself arranging the words, that it was all the time words that you yourself, out of your own heart, had been saying. Good morning, it is good to be together.
We welcome Bones Barone up to come up and light our chalice. Bones has been a member of KUF for 11 years. During that time, he has served on the Board of Trustees, the Committee on Shared Ministry, and the Ministerial Search Committee, as well as being a frequent usher and greeter. He's also a reoccurring performer on our KUF stage.
And always looks fabulous.
Yes, and always is fabulous. Join me now in lighting our chalice. If you have your own chalice or candle at home, please light it as I read our chalice lighting words by Marjorie Montgomery. Life is a gift for which we are grateful. We gather in community to celebrate the glories and mysteries of this great gift. Please join me in the spoken affirmation. The words will appear on the screen. We gather as a caring community, seeking life's deeper meanings. We value diversity and affirm the worth of all living things. We strive to speak truth in love, to act for justice, to grow in spirit, and to care for the earth. We celebrate with open hearts and minds the creative power that sustains and transforms us. Our next hymn is a song that we sang last week. Where Do We Come is a hymn based on 3 parts of a title of a painting by Paul Ganwin. I hope I didn't butcher that name. The painting depicts 3 groups of women, each representing a line in a song. Where do we come from represents the beginning of life. Where are we represents the daily existence of adulthood. Where are we going represents the time we face death. Our song leaders will tell you more. Please rise in body or in spirit to join in singing our hymn, Where Do We Come From, 10:03 in the Teal hymnal.
Thing one time. Don't follow the repeats, just keep going through. And then this section will follow Tiffany, starting with 1. Then this section will follow me, starting with 1, but later, so you'll have to wait. And then this section will follow my dad, Mike, with 1, but wait. And then the choir will do their thing following Ed. All right, let's do it.
Mystery, life is a riddle and a mystery. Oh. Okay.
Says you? All right, sorry.
Good morning, everyone. I have red hair and wearing black glasses and a sage green long sleeve blouse with white watermelon seed shaped petals. We're in the second week of exploring the practice of story, and today we're exploring the theme through the lens of how sharing our stories is a way of letting people in and sharing ourselves. And when we do that, it helps us bond as well as build friendships and community. So with that in mind, I have a wisdom story to share with you called The Storyteller. Once upon a time, long, long ago, in a small village, lived an old woman known as the Storyteller. She'd been part of the village for as long as anyone could remember, but no one actually knew where she came from. It didn't matter. Everyone in the village loved her and sought her out because she was known to have the best stories in all the land. She had a story for everything. Stories for times of joy, times of sorrow, times of triumph, and times of loss. Stories for when you're hurt or excited, stories that taught about love, and stories that shared wisdom about what to do when you're afraid. Every night, she would light her fire and wait for folks to join her. And every night they did, one at a time, to ask for the kind of stories they needed to hear. When she was done, the villagers would often ask her if there was anything they could give her as payment for her stories, and her answer was always the same. Yes, she would say. You can tell me a tale from your life. But the villagers rarely did. Most often, they would leave her a small homemade gift instead and kept their own stories close, feeling judgment or ridicule. One day, a young man burdened by a painful past approached the storyteller. He'd lost his horse in a tragic accident, and the weight of his grief was more than he could hold. He pleaded with her to share a story that might offer him some peace. The storyteller, with a gentle smile, replied, "The most powerful stories are not the ones we hear, but the ones we tell. Your story, though heavy, holds the key to healing." Hesitantly, the young man began to share his tale of loss, his voice trembling with emotion. As he spoke, the storyteller listened attentively, her eyes reflecting a deep understanding. And as villagers passed by her fire, they paused to hear what the young man was saying. The storyteller motioned for them to sit down, and they did, one after another, more and more. When he finished, the storyteller shared a story of her own, a tale of a young girl who had also had loss in her life, but found strength in sharing her grief with others. When she finished, another villager shared a story, and then another, and then another. As the night went on and the fire burned hot and bright, they began to realize that their pain was not unique, that others had walked similar paths, and that by sharing their own stories, they could offer comfort and support to each other and those who might be struggling in silence. The next morning, the storyteller was gone. And by her fire was a note that read, "You don't need me anymore, for you have each other. And together, you have more stories than you will ever need if you just remember to share them." From that day on, each of the villagers took turns at night, lighting the fire and sharing their stories. The story circles grew and grew until eventually the whole village was taking turns, listening and sharing stories for times of joy, times of sorrow, times of triumph, and times of loss. This story reminds about how deeply stories and relationships are connected. As the storyteller taught the villagers, our stories, even the difficult ones, hold immense power when shared. By opening ourselves up to vulnerability, we create connections and friendships, better ways of understanding each other and ourselves. So, in the week and days ahead, may all of us, kids and adults alike, hold on to this story as a reminder to take a risk and tell a few stories for the sake of deeper friendship. Now, please rise in body or spirit and join together in singing Our Children on Their Way to have some fun up in the Matin building.
And speaking of sharing, let me see. I apologize, I got lost. I got lost in my story. Let's see here. So, as a religious community, together, we can do the work of many. By sharing in the sacred act of giving, we transform gratitude into generosity towards our mission. One way that our mission inspires us to act on our shared UU values is to share our weekly offering with a local nonprofit agency providing services in our larger community. Our charitable giving recipient for the month of January is Peninsula Community Health Center. In a moment, our ushers will move among us with baskets to collect the offering. If this is your first time at KUF, your presence is your gift. Donations placed in the basket will go to the Peninsula Community Health Center. If you would like your offering to be used for KUF, please use one of the envelopes provided to you in your order of service when you came into the sanctuary. Instructions on other ways to make your gift will be on the screen. Let there be an offering to strengthen and sustain our beloved community, which is sacred to us. Let us enjoy a gift of music from our choir, led by Alina Hemingway and accompanied by Brian Kenny. The music is The Spirit of Miracles by Mike Menifee. Thank you, guys. That was amazing. So now is the time for our joys and sorrows. When shared together, our joys are amplified and our sorrows lessened. Okay. So we have a joy from Jim Franklin. For the kind people who helped him out of the cold puddle and into his car, especially for Mac and Lisa, for ensuring that Sue and Jim got home safely, and the visit later, a good end to a difficult day. And we have a sorrow from Marcy Mathis. Her friend and Kel's sister has been battling cancer and related surgery for several months. She is slowly getting better, but she lost her best friend also to cancer on January 1st. Please keep her and both of their families in your thoughts. And Suzanne Dunn has a joy to share. On Friday, she started the Master Gardeners training program, and she's so excited to be a part of this amazing program and looking forward to connecting with new people through her love of plants. And we have a joy from Ed Luby for great food and conversation at last night's Korean dinner. Thank you, Jack and Rhonda, for a great cultural feast. And we light one last candle for those joys and sorrows that are still too tender to share.
As we come together in the spirit of prayer and contemplation, hold all of those who have shared joys and sorrows with you today in your hearts. Continue to hold all those in California who have lost family members or have lost their homes to the fires. May they all continue to be safe. Spirit of life, ever adapting and renewing, we come together this morning with yearnings that do not match. We yearn for stability, for even one moment of feeling like we know what is going on, for the ability to predict and prepare for what is coming next. Yet, we also yearn for change. We pray for a world free from war, racism, dehumanization, and disregard for suffering. We reach for those connections that will help us to become our best selves. Hold in us both and. Cradle us in the mystery. Move us to express and live in gratitude for the beauty of this world, the loving people in our lives, and this day of possibility. To this we add the meditations of our hearts as we enter a time of silence, followed by singing Spirit of Life, which is number 123 in the gray hymnal, and the words will also be projected on the screen. Let us be together in silence. Amen.
Our first reading is Song of the Universe. For each child that's born, a morning star rises and sings to the universe, telling the story of who we are. Listen carefully. Can you hear the song, the story, the one sung and told for you when you were born? You, the result. You, the outcome. You, the celebration. Listen carefully. Can you hear it still? A song of possibility, a story, a possibility, a reminder that we still have time to be who and what we need to be.
Our second reading is from Dr. Jane Goodall, the ethologist and conservationist. She writes, "We're each in the midst of a life story, a story that's unfolding in front of us day after day. If we're open to experience, we will routinely encounter things that change the trajectory of our story, just as they change us. Life isn't just something that happens to us. Each of us has an opportunity to forge our own path, exploring the universe of which we are a part, and writing the story that is true to ourselves." Let us now take just a moment for reflection, followed by our post-reflection music. Thank you, choir. Perhaps one of the world's greatest storytellers is the ancient Greek poet Homer. His two great epics, the Odyssey and the Iliad, tell the stories of Greek heroes and how they were influenced by their gods during and after the 20-year-long Trojan War. Homer's storytelling offers some insight into how those mortal lives were shaped and lived. Now, personally, I'm a fan of that ancient Greek literary tradition. And in the past 2 years, I have reacquainted myself with the Odyssey and the Iliad thanks to new translations by the brilliant classic scholar Emily Wilson. Homer begins the Odyssey with these words: "Tell me about a complicated man. Muse, tell me how he wandered and was lost, how he worked to save his life. Now, goddess, child of Zeus, tell the old story for our modern times. find the beginning. As we tell our own stories for these modern times, we are well advised to find the beginning. I mentioned earlier in this fellowship that I grew up in Eastern Washington. From childhood, I heard stories of how both my maternal and paternal grandparents homesteaded neighboring land in the Palouse country of Whitman County in 1890 and 1891. My parents knew each other from childhood and often told stories at home of how they grew up on those farms, hauling hay to the 16 horses that pulled the combines that harvested the wheat, carrying water from the well, riding sway-backed workhorses to the one-room schoolhouse they attended. And these stories became part of my family's story, of my dad's parents leaving Glasgow, Scotland for new lives in this state, and my mother's seeking a fresh start from their lives in Missouri. With their arrival and settling on these homesteads, my family's story, I thought, began. It never included any mention of those who had lived on that land along the Palouse River before my grandparents came to claim it. And of course, we knew others had been there. My brother and I found arrowheads as we explored along the Palouse River. But I gave little thought about those others who were, or who they were, or where they might have gone. The arrowheads were merely relics of a distant, forgotten past. Only in the last 10 years, as I looked at state archives for those homestead claim documents, did I learn the full story. Those homesteads were offered by the U.S. government to bring white settlers to live on and farm that land that had been occupied for generations by the Palouse or Palace Indians. The sturdy Appaloosa horse, by the way, was bred by them and carries their name. The Palouse had been removed from their land and sent to the Confederated Tribes Colville Reservation, where their descendants now live. The U.S. government took that control of that land and then offered it to white settlers. So how does this new knowledge change how I tell my story? My parents' memories of life on the homesteads are still there. They have not been negated or erased. But my story is now much wider. It has a prequel, if you will. It now includes the story of those Palouse Indians who lived, hunted, and fished on that land for generations before my grandparents arrived. It includes the story of those who produced and used those arrowheads my brother and I found in the plowed wheat fields. It tells a story not only of my family ancestors, but of those who dwelled on that same land. The stories of the Palouse people and my ancestors were shaped in very different ways by the United States homestead policies enacted in the 1850s. Now, perhaps your family's story has expanded or been revised by new information from Ancestry.com or 23andMe, new understandings of relationships, beliefs, and motivations. And this is part of what it means to be human. We are constantly telling and retelling our stories, widening our understanding of how we have come to be who we are. And it's not only family stories that can lead to deeper understandings of who we are. Our personal stories reflect larger cultural struggles. Last week, I went to see A Complete Unknown, the film about Bob Dylan's rise from obscurity to fame. His songs, especially The Times They Are A-Changin', reflected those tumultuous 1960s social movements, Vietnam War protests, racial justice, feminism. And that song, as I watched the movie, reminded me how I was affected and changed by those cultural struggles. Perhaps you were one of those who questioned the decisions of our governments, federal or state, to wage war, to allow segregated hotels or restaurants, to deny women equal pay for the same job being done by their male coworker. Perhaps you were one of those who protested, marched, and shouted, "Hey, why is this happening? It's not right. And we need to speak up and act for change." That need to tell a new story is, in fact, what led to the development of this particular faith tradition, Unitarian Universalism. From its beginning, people have been compelled to question traditional stories, to imagine new stories. Both Unitarians and Universalists were declared heretics for rejecting the orthodox teachings of their religious communities. Unitarianism had its roots in the understandings of Bishop Arius of Alexandria, who taught that Jesus was more than human, but something less than God, that God was one. Arius's teachings contradicted the theology of his peers, who believed Jesus was one with God. These different understandings inspired conflict in the Roman Empire, and they became increasingly heated, like battles in the street. To settle the question of Jesus' role, the Emperor Constantine in 325 of the Common Era called a council of Christian bishops at Nicaea. Following vigorous debate over several weeks about the nature of Jesus and his relationship to God, during which Arius argued for a Unitarian God, the bishops ultimately voted to support the understanding of a Trinitarian God, the Father, Son, and the perhaps somewhat nebulous Holy Spirit. The Nicene Creed became church doctrine. Arius was declared a heretic and banished from the empire. However, his teachings lived on for centuries, primarily through underground religious networks, and eventually evolved into what we know today as Unitarianism. And that evolution was not without struggle and persecution. Yet believers in this new, non-orthodox story persisted, and their story shaped the faith we have today. Universalism had a similar story of individuals who wanted to tell a new story about God. They believed that a God who had created humans in God's image could not be a deity who condemned people to eternal punishment. Rather, they saw a God that was loving, forgiving of sins, and accepting of humanity. Universalists rejected the Orthodox story and suffered persecution, and held on to their optimistic faith story of a loving God, a story that lives today in Unitarian Universalism. This tradition's story, like our personal stories, has evolved, changing, growing, widening, deepening as we open ourselves to new understandings or learn of previously hidden or unspoken narratives. Our world, like our lives, is constantly changing. Indeed, as Bob Dylan sang, the times they are a-changin'. Today it seems that change is happening at an increasingly rapid pace. We're being called to examine our histories, our assumptions, our practices, and rewrite previously unquestioned stories. Our institutions are changing too. Institutions like Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. As our communities become more diverse, multicultural, we may need to take another look at the story we tell about this religious community. For many years, this fellowship has developed a degree of comfort in the story told and honored by its wonderful leadership and many longtime active members. Many of you are sitting in this room. But has that comfort sometimes made it difficult to look at ourselves in a new way, to imagine developing some new ways for a church to be church? This past December 22nd, I was privileged to participate with Melinda Hughes, Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship's Director of Religious Exploration, in this congregation's worship of your non-traditional, no-rehearsal Christmas pageant. Now, for me, and I hope it was for you as well, the pageant I felt was wonderful and inspirational as well. During that service, I took in the participants gathered up here on the risers. Mary, the adorable baby Jesus, wise persons, angels, stars, shepherds, and all the animals. It was a beautiful sight to see everyone's smiling faces, including the faces of the congregational audience. Now, as we planned the service, we took another look at the pageant's traditional language to see if it was truly welcoming and inclusive. How might we expand that service, yet retain its beautiful tradition so everyone could feel included in all ways? We eliminated some of what we now understand is coded language, understood by most of us, but perhaps perplexing to first-time visitors. Instead of saying our UU tradition, we said our Unitarian Universalist tradition. Instead of referring just to we, expecting visitors to know who we was, we said the Kitsap Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. Just some very simple edits to make sure we were not only speaking to those in the know, but to all visitors or newcomers as well. Because what may seem obvious to us may not be so obvious to the person who entered these doors for the first time. Taking a second look at our story and how we live it offers an opportunity to ask, how do we welcome the newcomer? How do we create a religious space that honors other sensibilities and allows for engagement of all of those looking for a faith community? Perhaps we are asked to discover new ways to widen our circle. Perhaps it means taking a second look at language, at the stories we tell ourselves, to recognize that there are other perspectives. After all, that is what Bishop Arias and his followers and what those early Universalists did. They asked others to widen their concepts of God, to accept there are many understandings of God, that there are multiple ways to be a person of faith, and to honor that spirit that moves through all humanity. To do that requires courage and imagination. Yet, this is how we as humans grow, expand our stories, and invite others to bring in their stories. We do this as individuals, and we do this collectively. And this is how we continue to work to transform and be transformed. Every single one of us has a role to play. Even if we aren't quite sure what that role is, each one of us matters and can make a difference. The Reverend Scott Taylor writes, "Just think about our cultural struggles with economic and social justice. The unconscionable income gap is often described as natural or the result of complex global dynamics over which we have little control. Similarly, the story of race in our country is too often told as an entrenched story or minimized with a story about how far we have come. The aim of all of these cultural narratives is the same: to undermine action, and worse, to undermine our belief that things can change. Which is why it's so important," continues Scott Taylor, "to remember that the ability to tell a new story has been at the center of our faith from the very beginning. We rarely think of our Unitarian Universalist history this way, but one of the beliefs that gave birth to our religion was the belief that human beings are authors of their stories, not just passive characters in them. Yes, it takes intentional and persistent effort to look at tradition, at practices, and make the conscious decision to change and grow. And that is what Unitarian Universalists are being called to do in the Unitarian Universalist Association's report, Widening the Circle of Concern. Congregations take a risk when they engage in equity, inclusion, and diversity work, but the rewards are congregations more fully aligned with those old traditional values, values of freedom and equality. Just as Arius and the early Unitarians and Universalists decided to question orthodox beliefs about God, fate, and freedom, we should never stop looking at our stories to see possibilities for widening our circles. Let us continue to ask ourselves and our congregations, who are we? Where are we going? What are we doing here? As in the words of that earlier hymn, yes, it is a mystery, yet the values that underlie this tradition remain the same: freedom, justice, inclusion, and transformative love. Together, as Unitarian Universalists in this community, in this country, and in this world, we have the opportunity to grow, to write, rewrite, and expand our stories as we move into the future. Homer's words remain as true today as they were nearly 3,000 years ago. To tell the old story for our modern times, find the beginning, and so may it be. And now, I invite you to stand as you are willing and able, and let us join together in singing our closing hymn, The Fire of Commitment. It will be projected on the screen as well.
Our mind
You'll find coffee and tea and other refreshments usually in the entryway, and feel free to bring them back into the sanctuary, because the Accessibility Committee is pleased to welcome their speaker, who will be with us here in the sanctuary. And so we welcome Kimberly Williams. You want to stand, Kimberly? Thank you. And Kimberly will be speaking with us at 11:45. So get your coffee and then come back in and participate in that program. And now we extinguish our chalice with these words adapted from those of Rachel Naomi Remen. Hidden in all the stories is the one story. The more we listen, the clearer that story becomes. Our true identity, who we are, why we are here, what sustains us, is in this story. Amen, and go in peace.